The rain poured heavily, drumming against the windshield of Ahmed's old, battered taxi. The wipers struggled to keep up as he navigated through the bustling city streets, his mind occupied with thoughts of overdue rent, his sick mother, and the looming weight of unpaid bills. Tonight was just another shift, until a wealthy-looking businessman in a sleek navy suit rushed into his cab, barking an address in a hurried tone. "Airport, fast," the man instructed, barely looking up from his glowing phone screen. Ahmed nodded, weaving skillfully through traffic. The man was clearly rich. His Rolex peeked out from under his cuff, and a faint scent of expensive cologne filled the car. Yet, his demeanor was distant, as though he had no time for the world around him. When they reached the airport, the businessman threw a few bills onto the seat, grabbed his briefcase, and stepped out without a second glance. "Sir, your change," Ahmed started, but the man was already gone, disappearing into the sea of passengers rushing toward the terminal. With a tired sigh, Ahmed collected the money, but as he reached to adjust the back seat mirror, his eyes widened in shock. Sitting there, partially tucked under the seat, was a luxurious black leather wallet, embossed with gold initials, DB. Ahmed's breath caught in his throat as he carefully picked it up. A quick glance inside revealed a thick wad of cash, multiple credit cards, and an ID card that confirmed the wallet belonged to David Blackwell, a powerful CEO of a major investment firm. For a moment, Ahmed just stared at the wallet, his heart pounding. He had exactly $7 in his own pocket. His landlord had threatened eviction. His mother's medical bills were piling up. This much cash could solve so many problems, and no one would ever know it. No cameras. No weaknesses. Just a struggling taxi driver with an opportunity. His hands trembled as he held the wallet. Should he keep it or return it? Ahmed's fingers tightened around the wallet, his breath uneven as temptation clawed at him. It was so easy, just a decision away from changing his life overnight. His mother's medicine flashed in his mind. The landlord's threats echoed in his ears. The hunger in his younger brother's voice from earlier that morning still stung. But then, another thought surfaced. His father's words, spoken years ago when life had been kinder. "Son, integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching." Ahmed clenched his jaw. No one was watching now. With a deep breath, he put the car into gear and drove back to the airport. The rain continued its relentless assault on the windshield as he pulled up to the terminal, scanning the crowds for the man in the navy suit. He checked the ID again, David Blackwell. Stepping out of his taxi, Ahmed hurried inside, his heartbeat quickening as he approached the airline's check-in counter. "Excuse me," he said, his voice steady despite the nervousness curling in his stomach. "I just dropped off a passenger, David Blackwell. I believe he left his wallet in my car. Can you page him?" The attendant, a young woman with a polished smile, nodded and made a quick announcement over the loudspeaker. Minutes passed. Then, a voice boomed from behind him. "You found my wallet." Ahmed turned to see David Blackwell standing there, his brows furrowed, his eyes flickering with disbelief. "Yes, sir," Ahmed said, holding it out. "You left it in my taxi." David took the wallet, opening it and scanning its contents. His gaze lifted, sharp and assessing. "You didn't take anything?" Ahmed felt a sting of offense, but kept his expression neutral. "No, sir. I wanted to return it exactly as you left it." David's lips pressed into a thin line, as if he didn't quite believe him. Then, he did something unexpected. He pulled out a thick stack of cash and extended it toward Ahmed. "A reward for your honesty," he said. Ahmed hesitated. Taking a reward for doing the right thing felt wrong. But just as he was about to refuse, David's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. "Wait here," he muttered before stepping away. As Ahmed watched him take the call, his ears caught fragments of the conversation. Something about a canceled investment. A crisis. David turned back, eyes stormy. "I need a ride. Right now. Where to?" "Downtown." Ahmed nodded and led him back to the taxi. What he didn't know was that this ride would change his life forever. As Ahmed pulled away from the airport, the silence inside the taxi was thick with tension. He could sense something was wrong, but he kept his eyes on the road, focusing on the rain-slicked streets ahead. David Blackwell sat in the back, his phone pressed to his ear. "What do you mean the investors pulled out?" he barked. Frustration rippled in his voice. Ahmed stole a glance through the rearview mirror. The man's fingers drummed impatiently on his knee, his jaw tight. "No, don't reschedule. I'll handle it myself." With a deep sigh, David ended the call and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Bad day, sir?" Ahmed asked cautiously. David let out a dry laugh. "You could say that." For a moment, it seemed like he wouldn't say anything more. But then, as if talking to himself, he muttered, 20 years of work, gone just like that." Ahmed frowned. "If you don't mind me asking, what happened?" David exhaled sharply, looking out the window as the city lights blurred past. "I run an investment firm. We were about to secure funding for a huge project, one that would change lives. But at the last minute, the investors pulled out. Billions just gone." Ahmed didn't know much about the corporate world, but he knew what failure felt like. He'd lived with it every day. "You'll find a way," he said simply. "People like you always do." David chuckled. "You don't even know me. What makes you so sure?" Ahmed shrugged. "Because you look like the kind of man who doesn't quit." David studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You're right. I'm not the type to give up, but I need a new strategy, a fresh perspective." Then he leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Ahmed, if you had a chance to turn your life around, to change everything overnight, what would you do?" Ahmed blinked, caught off guard. Well, I take care of my family first. Get my mom the best medical treatment. Make sure my brother gets a good education. Maybe even open my own business one day." David seemed to consider his words carefully. Then he pulled out his wallet, the same one Ahmed had just returned. "Pull over," he instructed. Ahmed did as told, parking near an upscale office building. David flipped through his wallet, then handed Ahmed a sleek black business card. "Come to this address tomorrow morning," he said. "I might have an opportunity for you." Ahmed stared at the card, his heart pounding. "Why?" he asked. David smirked. "Because you just reminded me why I started my company in the first place." Before Ahmed could respond, David stepped out of the taxi and disappeared into the rain. Ahmed sat there for a long moment, staring at the card in his hands. Was this really happening? Ahmed barely slept that night. His mind raced with questions. Was David Blackwell serious about offering him an opportunity? Or was this just a rich man's way of saying thank you? Either way, he knew one thing. He had to show up that BY morning. He put on his cleanest shirt and pressed trousers, even though his shoes had seen better days. He had no idea what to expect, but he wasn't about to let doubt hold him back. As he arrived at the gleaming skyscraper downtown, he hesitated at the entrance, gripping the business card. A security guard eyed him warily. "Can I help you?" Ahmed cleared his throat. "I have an appointment with Mr. Blackwell." The guard's brows lifted slightly before checking a list. Then, to Ahmed's surprise, he nodded. "Top floor. Take the elevator." Ahmed stepped into the elevator, his stomach twisting in knots as the doors slid shut. With each passing floor, he felt the weight of his reality pressing against the unknown future ahead. When the elevator finally dinged, the doors opened to a breathtaking view, a luxurious office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city that a receptionist smiled warmly. "Mr. Blackwell is expecting you." Ahmed was led into a spacious office, where David Blackwell sat at his desk, casually sipping coffee. "Ahmed, glad you made it." Ahmed nodded politely. "Thank you for inviting me, sir." David motioned toward a chair. "Seat. We have something to discuss." Ahmed sat, his heart pounding. David leaned forward. "I meant what I said yesterday. I'm looking for fresh perspective, honesty, and hard work. You returned my wallet without hesitation, even though you could have easily kept it. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." Ahmed listened, unsure of where this was leading. "I've decided to invest in a project, a new initiative that helps hardworking individuals like yourself break out of tough circumstances. And I want you to be the first person we help." Ahmed's breath caught in his throat. I don't understand. What do you mean?" David smiled. "I'm offering you a job here in my company, a real chance to build something for yourself. No tricks, no strings attached." Ahmed sat frozen, his mind struggling to process the words "a job." A real opportunity, Why would you do this for me? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. David leaned back in his chair. Because sometimes, life rewards those who do the right thing. And I believe in karma, Ahmed. Tears burned in Ahmed's eyes, but he quickly blinked them away. He had spent years barely scraping by, dreaming of a break like this. With a deep breath, he looked David in the eye and nodded. I won't let you down, sir. David grinned. Good. Welcome to the team. Ahmed walked out of Blackwell Enterprises that day, feeling like he was in a dream. Was this really happening? A few days ago, he was just a struggling taxi driver trying to make ends meet. Now, he had a job at one of the most prestigious firms in the city. David Blackwell had not only given him a position, but had also arranged temporary housing for him in a modest apartment close to the office. You'll need a stable place to focus on your future, David had said. It was overwhelming, but Ahmed promised himself he would make the most of this second chance. First day at work the following Monday, Ahmed stepped into the office, feeling a mixture of excitement and anxiety. He was assigned to the logistics department, where he would assist in managing transport operations for Blackwell's real estate projects. His supervisor, Lisa Carter, was a sharp, no-nonsense woman who eyed him curiously. David Blackwell personally recommended you. That's rare. Let's see what you've got. Ahmed threw himself into the work, staying late to learn the systems and taking notes on everything. He quickly realized that his experience as a taxi driver actually helped him understand routes, deliveries, and scheduling efficiency. He suggested small optimizations that save time and fuel costs, impressing his team. One afternoon, David stopped by the department. How's Ahmed doing? Lisa smirked. Surprisingly well. He's got an eye for details most people miss. David clapped Ahmed on the back. I had a feeling you'd be a great asset. Ahmed beamed. For the first time in years, he felt valued at a test of character one evening. Ahmed was heading out when he overheard a heated conversation between two employees, Greg and Jason. You think no one will notice? Jason hissed. Greg scoffed. Relax. It's just a few missing invoices. No one checks these things. Ahmed's stomach churned. He glanced at the financial reports Greg was holding. Something wasn't right. That night, he debated what to do. He had only just started at the company. If he got involved, it could backfire. But wasn't this the same dilemma he faced with a wallet? The next morning, Ahmed made a decision. He walked into David's office and calmly explained what he had overheard. David's expression darkened. Are you sure? Ahmed nodded. An internal audit was launched. And sure enough, the investigation revealed that Greg had been embezzling company funds for months. The fraud could have cost the company millions. When it was over, David looked at Ahmed with a proud smile. You've proven something important today. You're not just hardworking, but honest, even when it's tough. That's rare. An unexpected promotion a month later, Ahmed was called into David's office again. You've done well, David said. I've decided to move you to a leadership role in the logistics department. You've earned it. Ahmed's jaw dropped. Sir, David raised a hand. No need to thank me. Just keep being the man you've always been. As Ahmed walked out of the office, he felt a surge of pride. Life had changed in ways he had never expected, all because of one simple act of honesty. Ahmed settled into his new role as a logistics coordinator, managing schedules, deliveries, and efficiency for Blackwell Enterprises real estate projects. He worked harder than ever, but now his effort didn't go unnoticed. People respected him. He had a stable income, a decent apartment, and a renewed sense of purpose. But life still had more surprises in store. At a call from the past one afternoon, as Ahmed wrapped up his shift, he received a call from an unknown number. Ahmed, it's Miriam, your sister. His breath caught in his throat. Miriam. It had been years since they had last spoken. After their parents passed away, they had lost touch, partly due to his struggles, partly due to pride. Miriam, where are you? I heard about your new job. I'm so proud of you, she said, her voice breaking. I need help, Ahmed. His heart pounded. Tell me what's wrong. Miriam explained that she was struggling financially. She had 2 kids and was barely making ends meet after her husband left. Ahmed's gut twisted. Without hesitation, he said, "Come to me. I'll help in any way I can." For years, he had felt powerless to support his family. Now, for the first time, he could make a difference. Giving back over the next few weeks, Ahmed helped Miriam find a job and secured a better school for her children. He even convinced David Blackwell to let her interview for a position in HR. Miriam wasn't the only one he helped. Now that he had financial stability, Ahmed began paying it forward. He tipped struggling waiters generously, remembering the kind waitress who had served him when he was broke. He donated to shelters, recalling the nights he had slept in his taxi, unsure of where his next meal would come from. He mentored young workers at Blackwell Enterprises, teaching them the value of hard work and honesty. Every small act of kindness created a ripple effect. One day, David Blackwell called Ahmed into his office. "I hear you've been doing some incredible things outside of work," David said, smiling. Ahmed shrugged. I remember what it was like to struggle. I want to help others the way you helped me." David nodded. "That's exactly why I have another offer for you." A life-changing offer. David slid a folder across the desk. Ahmed opened it, and his eyes widened. "It was an investment proposal. I want you to run Blackwell's new community outreach program," David said. "It'll focus on helping underprivileged workers find employment, just like you did. You'll have a full team, funding, and complete control." Ahmed's hands trembled. This was more than just a promotion. This was a chance to change lives. "Are you sure I'm the right person for this?" Ahmed asked. David grinned. "You were always the right person. You just needed a chance." Tears welled up in Ahmed's eyes. Years ago, he had given away his last dollar to a kind waitress. Now, karma had repaid him in a way he could never have imagined.